Welcome to Well Played Podcast, the show on all things playful and joyous in education. I'm your host, Michael Matera, 6th grade teacher, author of Explore Like a Pirate, and speaker. Really looking forward to this continuation chat that we're going to have here with Thomas. Last week we talked about kind of building in story into our game, and we're going to continue to sort of dive deep into this dungeon, learn a little more of the mechanics at play here. We kind of had the layout. Now we're going to kind of get the, I don't know if the backstory is the right word, but like some of the things that fill in that space, right? With items and power-ups and maybe how those things work together, some ideas, that kind of thing. So, but if you missed last episode 36, I really would suggest pausing right here, going back to that one, and then maybe catching this one on your drive the next day, so that you can really get the full picture. Thomas, if you want to give a brief introduction, because they're just coming off the other one, give yourself a brief introduction.
Okay, well, hi everyone. I'm Thomas Berndhäuser from Germany, teaching grades 5 to 12 right now, from about German and history and sometimes a little Latin. And I'm gamifying since 2017, 2018, roundabout. I
love it. It's awesome. Well, good to have you back. I absolutely love, Thomas is a creative. He puts in the effort to, I don't think creativity is innate. He definitely takes his time. I know you really try to build the world out. He's helped me actually with some great websites that have little art assets you could use for, items and badges and, slideshows and those kind of things. So, comes no surprise that he builds out a world, for his students to sort of play in. Last week, we were talking about kind of this, character building, and that there are these skills that they could kind of build their character out with. You had kind of talked about, like, when a new student comes, the first thing that all the other kids descend on them and say, like, do you want to be this or that? So I think we should start there, like this character development. So if we were to go into your classroom, Thomas, we're your new student, what does that look like? What is the choice that I have before me as a character?
Well, the first thing you'd have to decide on would be the race of your character.
And what does that afford me?
Well, actually, first, nothing. It's just free choice. You have a few free choices. You get a character sheet from me. I tell you, welcome to the game. Here's your character sheet. Don't ask too many questions. Don't overthink all this. Just try and be creative. And there's a few options for you concerning races. Like, let me have a look. I added some lately.
So is that just more theme applied? But like whether I choose elf or dwarf or mage or whatever, can I still?
You could be elf, a dwarf, halfling, human.
But I'm saying that's just theme though, right? Like you're saying that there isn't like a benefit per se. Like I don't get a benefit because I'm an orc versus being an elf.
Well, no, that's not exactly the case, because each of those races, they have their special abilities. They have special choices for professions they can choose. So with each race, there come 2 professions, except for the barbarians. Barbarians are only vicious brutes. But all the others, they come with a choice. For example, an elf could be a ranger or a healing mage. And a dwarf could be a blacksmith or a warrior. Humans could be knights or wizards. And so they get special traits. For example, dwarves are not very quick, but they are strong and sturdy. And fairies have wings, so they can fly. But they are very, very fragile. And so you have your choice. Everything has its ups and downs, and humans are somewhat the average line. They don't own any special perks, but they're not weak at all. You can just rely on them working somehow.
All right. So, okay, it's a follow-up question here. If I'm going to be your student, right? So, cool. I'm going to select one of those races. And you sort of said that each race has a benefit, like a profession. So then is that like the second question? So I have chosen like to be human, or I've chosen to be a dwarf, and I like the idea of me being a blacksmith. So is that the second choice? Now I get whatever blacksmith benefit that is?
Correct. You choose, I'm a dwarf, and then I want to be a blacksmith, and then you're a dwarven blacksmith. You don't have to do anything for that. There are some dice rolls you have to do to determine your skills, but basically you just choose.
Well, that's my next question. So the skills, is everyone have the same, like if I had a character sheet, I guess that's how I'm picturing it. Does everyone have the same list of 5, 10 character? And I know you said that they can gain skills, but I'm saying like my base I just started, is there just these 5 skill sets or 6 skill sets that we all are? Or can I choose from all 50 skill sets and pick 5 that are on my sheet?
Well, at the beginning, there's 2 different types of... Well, I'm not sure if skill is the right translation here. You have like base values, like you have valor and wisdom and strength and all that.
Yep.
These are the same for each character. For every character, they have all these in different values, but everyone has valor.
Let's pause there.
Charisma.
Let's pause there. So how many of those are there, and how did they decide?
These are 7. There's 7 of those. Each character has them. Each and every one has them in different values. So maybe dwarves are stronger, barbarians are very strong, but they're not very smart. Elves they have a high dexterity, but they're not that strong.
And you've picked those values. So the fact that I've picked that I'm a dwarf blacksmith, my sheet then automatically is that I'm strong, but not fast.
Yeah, somehow you get a bonus. For example, let's say we stick with your example. You chose to be a dwarf. Then dwarves, they roll out those base values with a d6, and they add 5 to their roll for each value. So I determine how much strength I have. I roll a d6. I roll, say, a 3. Then I have strength of 8, but because I'm a dwarf, I get a bonus of +1. So in the end, I had strength of 9, but my dexterity would get -1 for being a dwarf. So rolling the same would then result in being just 7.
Got it. And that's part of the difference between the races is kind of the plus to the die, minus to the die for each of these categories. Yeah. Like the fairy, like you said, is going to probably not be as strong because they're delicate.
Yeah.
But does everybody get the +5 though?
The base value is +5, and then there is this
adjustment.
These bonuses to everything.
Okay. What are the 7 skills that you chose to go with?
Those 7 are it's valor, it's wisdom, charisma, intuition, dexterity, strength, and now I'm lost in translation.
I was going to say you are doing an amazing job, like translating on the fly here.
It's not like what you need to be a very good lockpick. Those
like cunning.
Yeah, not being smart, but with your fingers. It's Fingerfertigkeit in Germany. It's like finger. It's somehow like dexterity, but it's not the same. Not like you're jumping
just
over.
All in all, handy.
Yeah, something like that.
Got it.
So these are the 7 base values you have.
Okay.
And
And then
they are needed for the skills later.
I was going to say, I think you were saying too that we could gain skills. So I have these 7, but
Yes.
then it was like there was a way that I could kind of almost personalize my character a little more by doing something that's like, but I also learned how to like climb walls.
Yes. So let's say we're done with this. You have those 7 base values and you wrote them out, you're set. Then you have chosen a profession. Let's say for your dwarf again, you've chosen to be a blacksmith.
Mm-hmm.
And with that come 3 special skills for the blacksmith. So he's got repair, he's got blacksmith, and he's got endurance. So these 3 skills come with your choice of profession, and they automatically get written down on your character sheet, and so you can use them. And the way you use them is pretty simple. You have a value in that skill, so you start with a value of 1. Say you want to repair something, and repair is a skill that goes that is based on your dexterity, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure. Let's have a look. These are many skills. Well, it doesn't matter. We just say it would be dexterity. It doesn't matter.
Sure.
Right here. So say it's dexterity. Then you take your value in dexterity and you add your skill value, which is 1 at the beginning. So say you have a 7 in dexterity and a skill value of 1 in repair or in blacksmith or whatever. You add these to an 8, and to see if you succeed, you roll a d20 against that, and if you stay below or exactly at the same level of your skill plus that base value, then you succeeded, and if you're above it, then you did not.
Nice. So that's pretty simple, pretty clean.
Yeah, and it's quick. That was one of my intentions here. You have 1 roll and it's done. In the beginning I had a system where you had to roll 3 dice, but that was confusing for my students, and they were always thinking, oh, what do I have to roll now? And so there's 1 roll, it's a clean thing, everybody knows how that works, and it's quick and works.
So I think that's another design thing that we all need to keep in mind, right? Is your mental bandwidth in terms of the game and being able to keep all the rules understandable, but then also the fact that like it's got to translate to a student, and the student has to keep that, because you don't feel the fun of a game, you don't feel like you're making the choices if you're kind of constantly checking a rule book, right? You kind of want to feel like you confidently made this choice. I know that we want to dedicate 3 dice to this because like that's my choice, and I feel like between that and my skill sets and your power up, 3 dice we'll be able to sort of win this battle or whatever. But if you're constantly like looking up at the rule book, like what does your dexterity do and why do we want an extra die, then you're not really playing, you're just sort of reading through rules. So that's a good tip, is to not make it too weighty for yourself or your students.
Yeah, keep it quick.
Keep it quick. Keep it light. So all right, now I kind of want to know how some of these things work together. So I have these 7 skills. You had mentioned last time this idea of kind of a pool of dice. And in my head, I jumped to, that must mean like my team that I'm with, right? So like you and me are a team. We're going to go attack the banded castle. 4 cards get flipped out. Our pool of dice is made up of what in relation to our character sheet? How did we get a pool of dice? I think you said last time there's some items like a sword, like a double-handed sword might be like 2 dice. Are we just adding together all of our dice? Like my equipment says I have 5 dice. Your equipment says you have 6 dice. Now we together for this castle have 11 dice.
Yeah, basically that's the way it goes. I first went with the idea that each student should keep their dice for themselves and then just throw them in. But I found that this took too long. They wouldn't, as soon as they had this big pool of dice, the decision which dice to use went much faster, as when each of them had to decide, okay, I throw in 2 of mine and you throw in 2 of yours. This was a lot of discussion there. And, well, those discussions were fun to watch, but they took too much time.
Yeah.
They were discussing, and this didn't lead anywhere. There was no benefit in these discussions. And so I just had them pool them all together. So you have your level die, you have your equipment dice, and that's it. And you throw them all together. It somehow is a little special with mages, because mages have a wide variety of spells to use. They might come in later with additional dice, or they may use a special skill, like each wizard, as the profession wizard, can use a special skill, which is a fireball, which adds d20 of damage once per lesson if they want to. So they are a little special, but basically there is this one pool of dice, and the group decides how many of them will be used in the next action.
Nice. Like I said, I like that simplicity. So now, if you could kind of like just connect that. Now I want to click it into our skills. So we have these dice. We're going into this castle. Like, how does dice and my dexterity matter? How does dice and my valor matter?
Okay, there's different points where these can matter. For example, in many locations have somehow like a starting obstacle. If you want to enter them, you have to do a skill check. For maybe you have to climb something because you're entering a dragon's nest or something like that. So in the beginning, you have to check, and sometimes this means if you don't succeed, you can't participate. So your dice won't be added to the pool if you don't get in there. Of course, I always allow creative solutions. So maybe there is a character who is very good in climbing, and the students tell me, okay, he climbs up there, and we bought this rope, and he ties it up to there, and so maybe they can get a bonus to their results and get in there easier if they think in that way. But basically, they have to do a climbing test, and those who can't climb up there will stand down there and wave. They can't fight. And then there are, while they're in the adventure, there might be some traps, and traps have 2 ways to work. Sometimes there are like special assignments they have to complete, so they are really tied to the content, or, and that's mostly the case, they again require you to do some skills like avoid a trap, or like use your strength to open a door that is suddenly shut down or something like that. So there we have the skills in the game again, and but they are not usually used with those dice from the pool. The pool is mainly for fighting. But
so this would just be a skill. This would just be a skill check. Does somebody in our party have a strength of 5 or higher to break down this door?
For example.
And if the answer is no, then if our team's made up of a bunch of, weaker characters, we're shut down by this door.
They have still a chance because they can work together. So what I have introduced into the game is what I call the effect. So maybe you have, let's say you have a strength of 7, and you roll a 6, then you would have an effect of 1. And different characters could add their effects. So I say you need a total effect of 5, and then 5 characters add an effect of 1, then they can break up that door. And if one character is very bulky and strong, and he throws a 1 and he has this effect in one roll, then he can do this alone. But cooperation is always possible.
I like that sort of added together effect language.
It's quite an easy mechanic. It's like they can simply count it out. The card says like you need an effect of 7 to open that, or you need an effect of 9 to get through this, and then they roll and see if they can go any further, if they survive, if they take any damage.
When it's an effect check, is it a simple, or like a skill check? Is it as simple of, are you higher than this, or are they also rolling dice on that one?
No, they roll a dice. They always roll a dice. Like you have you have a skill of 7, and you roll a d20, and you have to stay below that to get an effect.
Got it. So it seems like this is your system, the way you have it laid out, and the robustness that you've added to your game. It seems like there's quite a lot there, because you have items, skills, traps, and locations, right? If I'm getting this correct, and your character development.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of things to keep in mind for me.
That's awesome. If somebody was going to get started with this, and that somebody might be me. So if somebody was going to get started with this, where would you suggest they begin? Because like it does seem like yours is a well thought out, intricate system, but I don't know if everybody could have 50 skills plus items plus locations plus bad guys.
I'd say for a start, drop the skills, leave them out. They are just an add-on to the character. I'd say you start with like 3 character races and maybe 6 professions. So you have a choice, but that's actually where I started, and I added new characters and new races and new professions as students came in with ideas. That's another suggestion I'd have. Ask them, what would you want to play? And then implement that over time. That's where fairies came in. Suddenly all the girls in my class wanted to play a fairy. And
now,
therefore that's
question
fairies.
About the professions and the skills that come with the professions. Is this mainly story driven? Like you said, like I'm the blacksmith, I chose that, and you said that had like 3 powers of repair and blacksmithing itself. I mean, let's take blacksmithing itself. Like, is it for me to just tell you, hey, I want to help make another sword for my teammates, so can we have an extra die going in here because I made an extra sword? And it's just conversational, like I've proven that to you? Or is it like, no, there's like some function in your game where it's like all blacksmiths now make something?
Well, that's a part of my game that is actually quite underdeveloped right now. I was always looking to create some kind of crafting system to allow students to create their own items or to power up existing items. I am at a point where I have a very complicated system of calculating resources and their prices in the shop. But I rolled that out about a year ago, and I found it too complicated. It was so very complicated that I lost track of that myself. And so I canceled this. Basically, the idea was, like I said, that students could create their own items. So in the system, and that's the part I'd like to keep, they need to find a recipe. Like you need 3 units of coal and 2 units of steel. And then you do a roll on your blacksmithing skill. And if you're successful, you've created a sword.
I like
it. That's basically the idea of what you can do then.
Nice. So your suggestion,
like repairing.
Your suggestion is start.
Items get destroyed after adventures.
Sure. So your suggestion is start with some like three-ish characters, each with 2 professions, so you have like 6. You have to come up with sort of 6 bonuses then.
Yeah, and that would be quite simple. And if you want to keep it real simple, and like I said, leave the skills out, then just give to each profession a certain a special item they get when they choose this profession. Like the mage gets a magic wand and the knight gets a sword or whatever. So they have a little bonus, but that doesn't make it too complicated for you, because you can start with a very small set of items. You can start with a small set of base values, and then you can always add on as soon as you find the time to develop new items, new skills, new perks, new whatevers for your game.
I like it. I will be honest, I think I'm going to take this system and implement a small version of it for one of my units. I'm going to kind of roll it out as a test unit. And something I guess I wanted to sort of suggest to everybody out there, when you hear any idea in the XP Lab community or the Well Played podcasts, you know, sometimes my mind jumps to like, how can I build this into my huge game, you know? And when I think that way, sometimes the answer is no. And then I don't get to try new things. But when you start to look at each unit you do as a little vignette, as a little opportunity to try something, and if you like it, develop it more, and then maybe that then next year could be the thing that is in your entire game, for example. So I just want to suggest people like keep that kind of open mind when you hear something as big as, you know, Thomas's what he has developed here, but it's so rich with story. You could totally connect stories to all these races. You can get kids working together because they have to make little raiding parties going in, hoping they have somebody with strength, hoping they have somebody with range, and hoping they have somebody that can repair their items as they're down there. That's awesome. And that's all like language, you know. Some of that, if you wanted a quick version, it might just be, do you have the skill? Like, it might not even be a die roll. Like, if you really just want to make it simple, like, can anybody repair those items? Oh, you can repair them? Cool. You know, ooh, we didn't have a guy in here that can repair, then those items are gone.
Yeah, simple as that.
Simple as that, like, but a ton of like choice, a ton of like thinking, a ton of jockeying. This is at least what we would say in the United States, jockeying for position and like jockeying your team to get the right skill sets to tackle whatever problems get thrown at you. That sounds fun to me. That sounds epic to me. That sounds fun, right? It just sounds fun. So I suggest kind of all of us to give this kind of a go. And I applaud you, Thomas, for really tackling what you have streamlined to like be quick and not take a ton of your time. But at the same time, you didn't skimp. You didn't reduce it to something so small that it's also not interesting. Like, you actually kept it a pretty infinite universe with low overhead, actually, for you.
You always have to see what do your students like, and I strongly recommend that you ask them. Just go out and ask them, what would you like to see in the game? That's what is helping me to develop all this. I had, for example, the night elves. They were not my idea. There's one student who just sent me like 4 or 5 pages with story, with skills, with item ideas. And he said, I want night elves. Here you have everything you need, Mr. Teacher, but I want
Mr. Teacher, go do this. I love it. Well, on that note, we have reflection time, and this reflection time quote, excited about it. It comes from a guy named Gary Gox, and he was one of the original designers of Dungeons and Dragons, and I thought that would go well with the story, the skill sets. And here's what he says. The secret we should never let the game masters know is that they don't need any rules. How does that hit you?
No, actually you don't need the rules. The rules are just simplifying things. The rules are just for in the end for the lazy ones, because the main thing you need is storytelling. You need to tell a story.
Exactly.
And as soon as you tell a good story, then students buy it, and the rules they can come later.
Why?
But you need that story.
I think you actually expressed it right. If you're playing like a traditional board game versus like a Dungeons and Dragons, the board game would say you are allowed to trade or you're not allowed to trade. So Thomas and I cannot trade. But you told a story where it was like, oh, I don't have climbing skill, I can't climb. But then you said if the group can think their way outside that box and say, well, I actually can climb, and we do have the rope, so if I climb up, throw this down, and while Thomas doesn't have climbing ability, but he does have high strength, we think with the rope, he's strong enough just to climb on up there with the rope. And while that might break the rules, like you don't have climbing skill, like, yeah, but that's a good story, and that fits the context, and they have logicked their way out of that. That's fine.
Absolutely. I think that's how the game should work. And if we can get students to think outside that box, to develop new ideas, and sometimes they are so creative, they just surprise me, then they have learned something very important.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Thomas, for coming back on week after week here to sort of round this idea out. I think it was a big idea, and hopefully everyone enjoys kind of the deeper look at that game piece for your game.
Well, thanks for having me.
I am sure that will not be the last time you're on. Thomas is always coming up with different game ideas and trying them out and sharing them out. I love having you at XP Lab when you can make it. That's also a great space where Thomas shares out some ideas. And everyone else, thank you so much for making Well Played a regular stop in your week. I hope you guys have a good one and continue to play on.